Good morning, my dear students. Today we'll do our next lesson, that's a poetry, Television by Roald Dahl. This poem has a message relevant to our times. It is about the negative effects that television can have on young minds. It also offers the advice that children should read books instead of watching television. Roald Dahl was born in 1916 in Wales. He is one of the most prolific of modern writers in English. He was a British novelist, short story writer, poet, screenwriter, fighter pilot, and has a large fan following among young readers. He was the author of many famous children's books such as Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Matilda, Fantastic Mr. Fox, and the BFG. Roald enjoyed enormous success on television. This poem, Television, is a song in his novel Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. About the poem. This poem, Television, tells all parents that they must never allow their children to even go near the television set, as the children have lost their innocence for their craze for this idiot box. Television severely damages a child's intelligence and creativity. The poet then talks about the joys of reading for children. He requests the parents to throw away the television set and install a bookcase in its place. He knows that at first the parents will face bitter opposition, but he is confident that the children will soon turn to books, experience the joys of reading, and later on thank their parents for doing what is actually them. Let us start with the line-by-line explanation of the poem. The most important thing we have learned so far as children are concerned is never, never, never let them near your television set. Or better still, just don't install the idiotic thing at all. In almost every house we have been, we have watched them gaping at the screen. They loll and slop and lounge about and stare until their eyes pop out. Last week in someone's place we saw a dozen eyeballs on the floor. They sit and stare and stare and sit until they are hypnotized by it, until they are absolutely drunk with all that shocking, ghastly junk. Now, the poem begins with a strong, emphatic message to parents, where Dahl advises from his experience that people should never ever allow their children to go near the television set. It is even better not to install the idiotic thing called television. The poet calls the television the idiotic thing, as it makes the viewers stupid and dull. The poet says that in almost every house that they have been to, they have found children staring at the screen with wide eyes. These children are so lazy that they lie lazily at one place. Sometimes they sit or lie in a lazy and casual manner and get sloppy. But still they stare at the television continuously until their eyes pop out or until their eyes are too tired to anymore. Next, he indulges in a bit of exaggeration when he says that in one house he has seen a dozen eyeballs rolling about on the floor. The children sit and stare at television sets all day and continuously watch the television. They are totally hypnotized, means they believe whatever they see on the TV to be real and start believing that TV is the accuratation of the real world. They are absolutely drunk, means that they get addicted to it and lose control of their mental faculties. Their minds, filled with the images and stories of a virtual world, compared to a drunk man's imaginative world. Oh yes, we know it keeps them still. They don't climb out the windowsill. They never fight or kick or punch. They leave you free to cook the lunch and wash the dishes in the sink. But did you ever stop to think, to wonder just exactly what this does to your beloved tot? The poet now says that he knows that the television keeps the naughty children calm. When they are in front of a TV set, they no more do mischievous things like climbing out the windowsill, fighting, kicking, and punching. As they are busy in watching TV, parents can easily do their household chores. The children let the mother to cook the lunch and wash the dishes in the sink without any disturbance. Now, the poet asks a question to the parents, that have they ever reflected upon what TV might do to their beloved children? The poet here cautions against the inherent danger in getting such freedom by the parents. It rots the sense in the head. It kills imagination dead. It clogs and clutters up the mind. It makes a child so dull and blind. He can no longer understand a fantasy of fairyland. His brain becomes as soft as cheese. His powers of thinking rust and freeze. He cannot think, he only sees. Now students, these lines are written in capitals to emphasize that they carry the main message of the poem. Watching the television regularly damages the sense in the head. Children are drawn away from the reality, the real world around him. The child just believes what he watches without considering the context. His own environment hardly matches with the ones he sees on screen, but still he thinks all that are real and applicable to him. It also kills the power of imagination in the mind. Children start to live in a preset imaginary world that they see on the screen. They slowly lose their own creative thinking, their own imagination. Though what TV shows displays are mostly fictional, that is a close imitation of the real world, not a completely different world as in a fairy tale. Roald Dahl continues to argue on how television affects a child's mind. Children watch different shows on different channels. Sometimes they are contradictory ideas. Sometimes it does not match with reality and they are surprised. Thus, these things clog and clutter up the mind, mess up the organized ideas and thoughts. Moreover, the child forgets to think on his own. His entire mind is full of the images he has seen on the TV. So, how would he get the time and scope to think over other things? His important time is wasted in the thoughts that are fictional and not related to his own life. Thus, his study and thoughts on how to improve his skills and personality are neglected. This is as if the child gradually becomes dull and blind. The poet feels that due to the imposed limitation on thoughts, the children can no longer understand the fantasy or a fairy tale. They cannot extend their imaginative power to that level. They are now used to see an image of the likely real world, a virtual reality. Dull opines that by watching television, the brain becomes soft like cheese. Children now believe everything they watch on or hear on TV. They cannot find their own logic to analyze and interpret a thing. The power of thinking, the thought process freezes and gets rusty. They cannot think on their own. All they do is watching and believing what others say on television. All right, you will cry. All right, you will say. But if we take the set away, what shall we do to entertain our darling children? Please explain. We'll answer this by asking you, what use the darling ones to do? How use they keep themselves contented before this monster was invented? Have you forgotten? Don't you know? We'll say it very loud and slow. They used to read. They would read and read and read and read and then proceed to read some more. Great Scott, gadzooks! One half their lives was reading books. The nursery shelves held books galore. Books cluttered up the nursery floor. And in the bedroom by the bed, more books were waiting to be read. Now, the poet says that he knows what the readers or especially the parents would ask him. The question is how parents shall entertain their affectionate children if they take the TV sets away from them. The parents, they grudgingly agree to take away the TV sets, but they have a question that now how the children will keep themselves entertained. The poet has the answer. The poet answers the above questions only by throwing a question. What people used to do to keep themselves entertained when this television was not invented. Now see, the poet has compared or he called this television a monster. TV set, which is a dreaded device, is a monster to him. He wants people remind what they used to do in the absence of such a device. Now the poet himself reminds us that children in earlier times used to read lots of books. They used to read and read. Reading was their hobby. They continuously used to read. Now, surprisingly, people at that time spent half of their time by reading books. Great Scott, gadzooks is an expression of surprise or amazement. So in those earlier days, the nursery shelves were full of books. In nursery schools, books remained scattered on the floor. Even in their home, the bedroom and the bed, everywhere books were cluttered up. The children used to read well-crafted, fantastic stories, and more books were read by the children. See, more books were waiting to be read. Here, the poet wants an active relationship between the children and the books. So here, the personification of books is there. That books, they were waiting to be read. Such wondrous, fine, fantastic tales of dragons, gypsies, queens and whales, and treasure isles and distant shores, where smugglers rode with muffled oars, and pirates wearing purple pants, and sailing ships and elephants, and cannibals crouching round the pot, stirring away at something hot. It smells so good. What can it be? Good gracious, it's Penelope. The younger ones had Beatrix Potter with Mr. Todd, the dirty rotter, and Squirrel Nutkin, Pigling Bland, and Mrs. Tiggywinkle, and just how the camel got his hump, and how the monkey lost his rump, and Mr. Toad, and bless my soul, there's Mr. Rat and Mr. Mole. Oh, books, what books they used to know, those children living long ago. The poet here reminds the parents that the rooms of children were full of books in the past. These books contained wonderful stories about huge monsters, gypsies, queens, princesses, whales, and treasure islands. In some of these stories, the smugglers and sea robbers used to operate in boats with covered oars. There were stories about elephants and the cannibals. Now, cannibals are the persons who eat the flesh of other human beings. The cannibals used to eat a very sweet-smelling dish named after Penelope, the faithful wife of Odysseus in Homer's epic poem, The Odyssey. The children who read about it wondered what the dish could be. Now the small children were fond of the stories of the famous English writer Beatrix Potter. The stories were about Mr. Todd and his dirty dog, the squirrel Nutkin, the small pig named Bland, or about Mrs. Tiggywinkle. These stories were fascinating. Even the names of the characters ignite the thinking. The names of the characters are unique because with the name you can guess what kind of person or what kind of character it might be. For example, if we talk about Squirrel Nutkin, we can think that maybe the Squirrel Nutkin loves to collect nuts, so its name is Nutkin. And we can also see that in the line Mrs. Tiggywinkle and the poet ends this line with a hyphen. It shows that the world of books is never ending. The imagination is vast. Books enrich the imagination of the kids. So now the poet talks about the camel. They were about the camels getting the hump on his back, or about the monkey losing the rear part of his hairy body. These are some comic stories. There was a story about Mr. Todd, Mr. Rat, and Mr. Mole. Obviously, these are the stories which fascinated all children before the invention of television. Before the invention of television, children used to read a lot. There was no shortage of lively characters. And the last two lines of this passage tells us that it gives us a message that books were a boon for the children of the earlier eras and are an important part of a child's life. So please, oh please, we beg, we pray, go throw your TV set away, and its place you can install a lovely bookshelf on the wall. They fill the shelves with lots of books, ignoring all the dirty looks, the screams and yells, the bites and kicks, and children hitting you with sticks. Fear not, because we promise you that in about a week or two of having nothing else to do, they'll now begin to feel the need of having something to read. And once they start, oh boy, you watch the slowly growing joy that fills their hearts. They'll grow so keen, they'll wonder what they had ever seen in that ridiculous machine, that nauseating, foul, unclean, repulsive television screen. And later, each and every kid will love you more for what you did. Roald Dahl, the poet, now requests the parents for their own good to throw away their television set and install a bookshelf in its place. After installing the bookshelf in place of a TV set, the parents might face some dirty looks from the children. The children might scream, yell, bite, and kick the parents. They may even hit them with their sticks. Now, this is actually an exaggeration, but the poet insists on filling that shelf with lots of books on various topics, ignoring all those screaming and yelling. Dahl here assures us that after a week or two, those children would find nothing to do without a TV set around. So, they will finally feel the need to read books. They will come closer to books on their own. And once they start reading, the only way is to read more and more. They will find it interesting to read more and more books that will give them the imagination and thoughts, the knowledge and wisdom, the satisfaction of mind and heart. And at one stage, they will grow so keen on reading books that they will wonder what they had found in that silly machine called television. They will find the television screen disgusting and unclean, as they will discover the joy of reading books. And finally, each and every kid will love the parents them the opportunity to find real joy in reading books. Even when they would grow up, they would thank their parents for taking that television set away and installing the bookshelf there. The poet advocates and only reading. Dahl thinks that TV can never be a substitute for books. Books are the only things that can enrich your imagination and that can give you the real wisdom. In our next video, we will discuss the title justification, the theme of the poem, critical analysis, poetic devices used in this poem, and I'll also give you a worksheet for this poem. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.